There was a night when the moon hid behind thick clouds, and the wind whispered secrets no one dared hear. In that heavy silence, Naima felt a chill that wasn't from the cool air. Something dark stirred beneath the great baobab tree that guarded Tambiko Village, something that would change her life forever. Tambiko was a village cradled between red earth hills and wide, golden savannas, where the sun blazed like a roaring fire. Its people lived simply, their days shaped by the rhythm of the seasons and the songs of the river that wound like a silver ribbon through the land. Children's laughter danced with the birdsong, and smoke curled from the clay rooftops as women prepared meals of roasted millet and fresh goat milk. At the heart of Tambio, the baobab stood wide and ancient, its roots like great arms hugging the earth. The elders said it held the voices of the ancestors, stories, warnings, and blessings that carried through generations. This tree watched over the village, but on that quiet night, even the baobab seemed to hold its breath. Naima was born. Beneath this tree's shade, a gentle soul with eyes like deep pools reflecting the sky. She was quiet but bright, weaving dreams as carefully as her mother wove cloth. From the small hut she called home, she watched the world with wonder, her heart full of hope for a love that felt like home, steady, kind, and warm. Her family was humble, their hands worn from tending the soil, but their spirits rich with laughter and song. Naima grew up helping her mother gather wild herbs and tending a small garden of yams and sorghum. Though their life was simple, her mother always told her, "You are meant for more, child. A heart like yours will find its path." Louis belonged to the powerful Mandaki family, whose compound sat proudly on the outskirts of Tambiko. The Mandakis were known far and wide, respected leaders with eyes like hawks and voices that could command silence. Louis was their only son, tall and graceful, with a smile that could light the darkest night. His words were smooth like honey, and his manners polished from years of learning the ways of leadership. But beneath Louis's charm was a quiet loneliness, a boy who longed to be more than a chief's son, more than a symbol of strength. He wanted to be loved not for his power, but for the man he was beneath the fine robes and proud titles. Their paths crossed one sunlit afternoon when Naima was gathering water from the river's edge. Louis, riding home from a council meeting, saw her and stopped. She looked up, startled by the sudden presence. Their eyes met, and for a moment the world seemed to still. The river's song hushed, the birds paused in flight. Louis dismounted and smiled. "Your name?" he asked gently. "Naima," she replied, her voice soft as the breeze through the tall grass. "I am Louis," he said, "son of Mandaki, but I hope to be more than that." From that day, there, worlds began to weave together. Louis visited often, bringing gifts of wild honey and sweet bananas. They talked for hours beneath the baobab, sharing stories and dreams. Naima's laughter became a light in Louis's life, and his kindness felt like a balm on hers. The village watched their love bloom with hopeful hearts. When Louis asked for Naima's hand in marriage, it was as if the sky itself had opened to bless them. The wedding day was a whirlwind of joy and color, with every corner of Tambiko alive in celebration. Drums echoed like thunder. Women sang with, voices like rivers flowing strong, and children darted between dancing feet. Naima wore a robe dyed in deep ochre and wrapped a bright kente cloth around her waist, her heart fluttering with a mix of hope and wonder. Louis stood tall beside her, his smile wide but his eyes holding a secret shadow she could not yet see. Her mother's gentle words still lingered in her ears. "You enter a sacred place, child. Make it your own." With that blessing tucked close, Naima stepped across the threshold into Louis's world, a world that glittered with power but whispered with unease. The Mandaki compound was like a small village itself. Walls of sun-baked clay rose high, enclosing courtyards shaded by mango and neem trees. The air smelled of earth and cooking fires, but beneath the surface was a silence that seemed to swallow the warmth whole. At first, Naima smiled through awkward greetings and careful dinners, learning the dance of smiles and words expected of a bride, but inside, a cold shadow crept quietly, settling in the spaces between. Elder Mandaki, her new father-in-law, watched her with eyes sharp as hawk talons. His greetings felt like puzzles, his compliments laced with a weight that made her skin crawl. "You shine brighter than the harvest moon tonight," he said once, his gaze lingering too long and drifting low. Naima's breath hitched, her hands clenching the folds of her cloth as she forced a weak smile and turned away. Days grew heavier. Whenever Louis was away at the council, Elder Mandaki appeared in places she least expected, by the well when she fetched water, in the kitchen as she stirred the pot, even in the garden where she tended the marigolds. His presence was like a storm cloud, darkening the sunlight, pressing too close, speaking in words that twisted like thorns beneath honeyed tones. One afternoon, as she folded clothes in the courtyard, he leaned against the doorway, voice low and thick. "Louis is fortunate, but not every man deserves a treasure like you," he murmured, eyes dark and unreadable. Naima's heart hammered in her chest. She looked away, pretending not to hear, but her hands shook, the threads slipping from her fingers. That night, she told Louis only fragments, afraid to shatter the fragile piece. He laughed it off, brushing her fears away like dust. "He is just an elder. That's how they speak," Louis assured her. But Naima's soul whispered a warning she could no longer ignore. This was no harmless talk. Her home, once a place of safety, began to feel like a cage. She locked her door each night, kept her eyes low at meals, and spent more time outside, offering to run errands just to breathe free air. Yet even then, she felt the weight of his gaze, like unseen hands tracking her steps. Sleepless nights followed, filled with questions that twisted in her mind like dry roots. Had she done something wrong? Was this the price of joining a powerful family? Was fear in one's own home a secret no one spoke aloud? No one else saw or chose to see. The servants averted their eyes. The family stayed silent. Naima's quiet pain was invisible, and it pressed down on her like the thick night air before a storm. One moonless night, standing alone beneath the baobab that had watched her since birth, she whispered to the shadows, "Something is very wrong." She did not know yet that the darkness was only beginning. The air was warm, but carried a tense stillness, as if something heavy was about to fall. She sat near the fire outside her new home, her hands busy with weaving, but her mind was far away, filled with worry and fear. Suddenly, a loud voice called from the entrance, "Naima, come to the elder's house now." Her heart jumped. Elder Mandaki's voice was not one she heard often, but when she did, it meant something serious. Slowly she rose, wiping her hands on her skirt, and walked toward the elder's hut. The villagers gave her curious glances, whispering behind their hands. They all knew Mandaki was a powerful man, the father of Louis, Nima's husband, and they respected him deeply. But respect came with fear. Naima entered the hut, where Elder Mandaki sat on his carved wooden chair, his face shadowed by the dim firelight, his eyes sharp and cold, fixed on her. "Naima," he said, his voice low but firm, "I want to talk to you." Naima swallowed hard, her throat dry. "Yes, Elder Mandaki?" He stood up slowly, walking closer to her. The weight of his presence pressed down on her like a heavy stone. "You'll be my wife," he said bluntly. "Not Louis, mine." Naima froze, the words hitting her like a thunderclap. Her hands trembled, and the weaving she held dropped to the floor. "What?" What do you mean? She stammered, stepping back. Mandaki's face darkened with a cruel smile. Louis is weak. He cannot protect you, nor honor you. But I can give you power, wealth, respect. You will be the most important woman in Tambico. No one will dare look down on you again. Naima felt her stomach twist. This was a nightmare she had never imagined. She looked around the hut. The fire flickered shadows across the rough walls, and the silence between them grew heavy. No, she whispered, shaking her head. You're Louis's father. This is wrong. But Nandaki stepped closer, his eyes burning. Louis does not deserve you. He lets you suffer. I have watched you struggle in silence. I can give you a life beyond your dreams. You only need to say yes. Naima's hands clenched at her sides, tears threatening to spill. Please, she said softly, don't say such things. This is not love. It is cruelty. The elders' face harden. Think carefully, Naima. Refusing me could make your life very difficult. Without waiting for her answer, he turned and left the hut, leaving Naima alone with her fear and confusion. Her legs felt weak as she walked home. The village now dark and silent. She locked the door behind her, sank to the floor, and cried. Her whole body shook as she thought of her parents, who had smiled so proudly on her wedding day. She thought of Louis, the man she had promised to love and trust. And now she felt trapped in his shadow from which there was no escape. That night, Naima didn't sleep. Her tears dried slowly on her cheeks as she sat in the corner of the room, clutching her hands together, trying to calm the storm inside her. She felt betrayed by the man who was supposed to protect her and by the father who should have been kind. But in that silent darkness, a small flame flickered inside her, a fire of courage she never knew she had. She would not give in to fear. She would fight. The next evening, when Louis returned from the fields, his face tired and dusty, Naima waited for him in their small room. Her eyes were red and swollen, but her voice was steady. Louis, she said quietly, I need to tell you something. Something very important. He dropped his tools by the door and looked at her, rubbing his forehead. What is it now? He muttered, already tired. Naima took a deep breath, steadying herself. Last night, your father, Elder Mandaki, he called me to his hut. He said he wants to take me as his wife. Louis's eyes narrowed, but instead of anger, a strange coldness appeared on his face. What? He said, his voice sharp. He said Louis is weak, that you don't deserve me. Naima continued, her voice shaking. He promised me gold, land, and power if I agreed to be with him. For a moment, Louis said nothing. Then, suddenly, his hand struck her face. A sharp slap echoed through the small room. Naima stumbled backward, her cheek burning, tears welling in her eyes. You liar, Louis shouted, his face twisted with anger. How dare you accuse my father of such lies? Naima couldn't speak. The pain from the slap was nothing compared to the pain deep in her heart. Do you think I'm a fool? Louis shouted, pacing the room. You're trying to ruin my family's name. You want to play the victim. Naima's voice cracked as she tried to explain. I'm not lying. I'm scared. I thought you would protect me. Protect you? Louis laughed bitterly. You want to make my father look like a monster. You want attention. Maybe you even encouraged him. Naima felt her body freeze. What? She whispered. You've been strange since you came here. Too quiet, too clever. Maybe you like the attention. Louis spat, his words cruel. Naima broke down in tears. I came to you because I love you and trusted you. But Louis looked at her with disgust. You brought shame to my house. The man who had promised her a future became a stranger in an instant, cold, cruel, and unrecognizing. That night, Naima sat alone in the dark corner of the room, holding herself tightly. She felt more alone than ever in her life. She had been betrayed by the man she loved and the father she feared. But as tears streamed down her face, a silent promise formed inside her heart. If no one would fight for her, she would learn to fight for herself. The first light of dawn barely touched the sky when everything changed for Naima. In the quiet village of Tambico, her small home felt suffocating as the silence was shattered by heavy footsteps. Louis burst into the room, his face tight with anger and disappointment. Without a word, he threw Naima's small bag onto the bed with a harsh thud. "You're leaving today," he said flatly, his eyes cold. Naima's heart skipped. "Leaving? But where will I go?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Louis's jaw clenched. "That's not my concern. You've brought dishonor to my family, especially to Elder Mandaki. After what you said about him, I can't keep you here." Tears welled up in Naima's eyes. "I only spoke the truth. I didn't do anything wrong," she pleaded. But Louis didn't soften. "Get out before my mother sees you. I won't have her knowing what you've done," he warned sharply. Naima glanced around the room, her hands trembling. This was the space she had dreamed of filling with laughter and love. Now it felt like a prison. Her cheek stung where his hand had hit her, but she swallowed the pain and picked up her bag slowly. No one stopped her. No one looked at her, not his mother, not his sisters. It was as if she had disappeared. As she stepped outside, the chilly air of Tambico wrapped around her like a bitter reminder. Whispers followed her down the dusty path. Eyes peeked through windows, quickly darting away. Naima held her head low, fighting back tears, knowing she had nowhere to turn. Naima had nowhere else to go. The only path before her led to the town of Mandaki, a place she had only heard stories about but never visited. It was far, and the journey would be difficult, but she had no choice. Every step felt heavier than the last, her feet aching from the rough dirt roads, her stomach empty and growling. Her thin dress caught on thorny bushes along the way, and her worn slippers barely protected her feet from the sharp stones. The sun blazed fiercely overhead, but Naima didn't stop. The pain in her heart pushed her forward more than anything else. As night fell, the darkness wrapped around the trees and fields like a thick blanket. Strange noises rustled in the bushes, making her flinch. Dogs barked somewhere far away, and the cold wind bit through her thin clothing, chilling her to the bone. But Naima kept moving, step by step, because turning back was not an option. Hours later, when she finally saw a small wooden sign that read, "Mandaki Women's Shelter," a wave of relief washed over her. Her legs nearly gave way beneath her, and she stumbled forward to knock weakly on the gate. The door opened slowly, and an older woman with kind eyes and a warm smile appeared. "Child, what has happened to you?" she asked gently, placing a comforting hand on Naima's shoulder. Naima's tears broke free as she collapsed into sobs. She couldn't find the words to explain. The woman, Mama Nyasha, didn't press her. Instead, she wrapped Naima in a thick blanket and led her inside. Sitting beside her quietly, Mama Nyasha waited until the sobs softened. "You are safe here now," she whispered. "This shelter is for women like you, women who have been hurt but who still carry strength inside." Naima looked up through tear-streaked eyes and felt a flicker of hope she hadn't known in days. Mama Nyasha offered no judgment or questions, only kindness, a warm meal, and a place to rest. Days passed at the shelter, and Naima slowly began to heal. Mama Nyasha, a retired lawyer known in the region for her fierce battles defending the powerless, saw something special in Naima's quiet courage hidden beneath the pain. One evening, as the sun dipped low behind the hills, Mama Nyasha sat beside Naima and gently took her hand. "It's time they hear your story," she said softly. This time they will listen. Naima looked up, her eyes still wet but filled with a new fire. With Mama Nyasha's guidance, she gathered the strength to stand against the man who had ruined her life, Elder Mandaki. Filing a complaint against a respected elder was no small thing. When the local officials first heard her accusations, they scoffed. A young woman accusing a powerful leader? They whispered behind her back, dismissing her as confused or vengeful. But Mama Nyasha was relentless. She filed the papers with precision, contacted journalists, and made sure the court date was public knowledge. This time, the truth would not be hidden in silence. The day of the hearing arrived. Naima entered the courtroom wearing a simple dress, her hands trembling but her gaze steady. Across the room sat Elder Mandaki, draped in expensive robes, surrounded by his lawyers and loyal supporters. He looked calm, almost amused, as if this was a game he had already won. When the judge asked him about the accusations, Mandaki laughed. Softly, "My son's wife is mistaken," he said, shaking his head. Perhaps she misunderstood a gesture of kindness from an elder. Naima said nothing at first. She let him speak, watched as he twisted the truth like a skilled actor. Then it was her turn. Rising slowly, voice shaking in the beginning, she found strength in the faces watching her. "I have proof," she said, pulling a small voice recorder from her bag. The room fell silent. "The night he tried to force himself on me, I recorded everything." Her words hung in the air, heavy and undeniable. The moment the recording started playing, the courtroom gasped as one. Mama Nyasha leaned forward, her eyes fixed on the judge, who sat stunned. The room fell completely silent as the harsh voice of Chief Mandaki echoed through the speakers. "You're wasted on my son," the voice said, smooth but cruel. "You should be with someone like me. I can give you gold, land, anything you want. Just say yes." Then came Naima's quiet, frightened voice. "Please don't. This is wrong." The faces around the courtroom froze. A woman covered her, mouth in shock. A man muttered a curse. Even the judge leaned back in disbelief, clearly shaken by what he had heard. Chief Mandaki's confident smile vanished instantly. His lawyers exchanged worried looks, whispering urgently. But it was too late. The truth was out. Outside, reporters began typing furiously. News spread like wildfire, flooding social media, radios, and TV. Hashtags like #justice for NAMA and #ProtectOurWomen trended nationwide. Across the country, people watched closely. Women shared their own stories of pain and courage. Naima, once whispered about with pity, was now a symbol of strength and hope. In the courtroom, the judge called for order, but Chief Mandaki sat silently, for the first time in ages powerless and defeated. The man who once believed he could buy silence was now facing the storm of justice. And Naima? This time, she didn't cry. She stood tall beside Mama Nyasha, her heart racing but full of pride. She had been thrown out, humiliated, betrayed, but her truth had broken down walls. And this was only the beginning. News channels played her story over and over. Her soft voice, speaking up against power. The shocking words of Chief Mandaki. The betrayal by her own husband, Louis. People everywhere, offices, markets, homes talked about it. They couldn't believe the courage of the girl from Tambiko village who had shaken the whole nation. Reporters camped outside the courthouse. Every detail of Naima's life became headline news. Her photo, nervous but brave, was on magazine covers and TV screens. But Naima didn't want fame. She wanted justice. And justice was finally coming. Chief Mandaki's reputation crumbled. His village turned its back on him. The elders stripped him of his title. A man who preys on his own daughter-in-law is no chief, they declared. His power vanished overnight. Land, businesses, influence, all gone. People no longer bowed when he walked by. Instead, they whispered, and some even spat at his feet. As for Louis, things became worse. When the media exposed the recording and the truth behind Naima's story, Louis tried to stay silent. But reporters uncovered the slap he gave her, the lies he told to protect his father, and how he threw Naima out like dirt. Women's groups demanded his arrest. Police came to his workplace and handcuffed him in front of everyone. Louis was charged with defamation, domestic violence, and obstructing justice. Behind prison walls, Louis was no longer the charming husband people admired. He was just a coward who failed to protect the woman he once promised to love. Outside prison, something powerful was growing. Women from every corner of the country stood up. They posted videos sharing their own stories of abuse and betrayal. They held rallies, carrying banners that read, "Justice for Naima and protect our women." Young girls held signs with her face, calling her a hero. Even celebrities and politicians spoke out. One famous actress said on live TV, "Naima's courage reminds us all, silence is not strength." Truth is, Mama Naz's shelter was flooded with calls every day, women wanting to volunteer, donate, or seek help. They said Naima's bravery gave them hope and strength. Naima herself did not rush to speak to the media. She focused on healing and planning the next steps of her fight. She let the truth unfold on its own, like a silent river carving through stone. But behind her calm silence, she was watching everything, every glance, every whisper, every flicker of doubt in the courtroom. And deep inside, something stirred, something she hadn't felt in a long, long time. Hope. The same girl who once wandered alone under the cold night sky, heart shattered and without a home, was now the face of a movement. She had transformed, no longer a victim, but a warrior, and the world saw it. Neighbors who had once whispered cruel things behind her back now spoke her name aloud with pride. "She brought down a chief," they said. "She showed us what real strength looks like." Through it all, Naima remained steady, not out of anger or thirst for revenge, but for every woman who never had the chance to speak, for every girl told to keep quiet, for every wife blamed instead of believed. She lost almost everything: her home, her marriage, the life she thought she had. But in return, she gained something much greater, a voice, the voice of a nation, and this time it would not be silenced. Naima never dreamed her pain would one day light a path for others. After the courtroom drama and the national uproar, people didn't forget her. They followed her story, prayed for her healing, and waited to see what she would do next. And she didn't disappear. Naima rose. At first, she was hesitant to speak publicly. The wounds were still raw, the memories sharp. But Mama Nyasha, her wise and gentle guide, whispered, "Your story is not just yours anymore. It belongs to every woman who has been silenced." When a women's rights group invited her to speak at a local event, Naima said yes. She stood before a room full of strangers. Her hands trembled as she held the microphone. But then she looked into the eyes of the women around her, some teary, some hopeful, all listening, and her voice found its strength. She spoke not as a victim, but as a survivor. She told them how she was betrayed, how she walked through darkness alone, how she fought for her truth and won. Her words were simple, but they cut deep. Some women cried openly. Others applauded. The video of her speech spread across the country in hours. People called her brave, fearless, powerful. From that moment on, Naima was no longer just a name. In the news, she became a symbol of hope. Organizations invited her to conferences and rallies. Universities asked her to speak to students. Human rights lawyers wanted to work with her. She was no longer the girl who had been kicked out. She was the woman changing lives. But Naima wanted more than words. She wanted action. So, with Mama, Eulaini at her side, she founded something that would become her life's mission, Naima's Shield. The name was everything to her. A promise. A shield for those without protection. A safe place for women who had been abused, silenced, or abandoned. Naima's Shield offered shelter, legal aid, counseling, and job training. Women could arrive broken and leave strong. The first center opened in Cabana, the same town where Naima had once come with nothing but tears in her eyes. On opening day, 3 women came. A month later, 20. Then 100. Soon, Naima's Shield was helping women from villages and cities across the nation. Naima worked tirelessly, day and night. She met survivors, listened to their stories, helped them find justice, and reminded them they were never alone. Her strength was quiet but unbreakable. She didn't need fancy words, she had truth, and that was powerful. Donations poured in from wealthy businesswomen, young girls raising money with bake sales, even men who said, "I have daughters, and I want the world to be safer for them." Naima thanked them all with grace. She often said, "I didn't want this story. I didn't choose this pain. But I choose what I do with it, and I choose to protect others." Across every corner of the country, people knew her name, not as the girl who was thrown out, not as the girl who was betrayed, but as the woman who turned her scars into strength. Naima had lost everything she once held dear. But in that loss, she discovered something far greater, a voice that no one could silence, a purpose that could never be shaken, and a power that now belonged not only to her, but to every woman who needed it. Months slipped by, then a year. Life had changed so drastically that her past felt like someone else's story. She was busy every day meeting women, managing her foundation, delivering speeches, and helping others reclaim their strength. Yet, no matter how far she moved forward, a small part of her heart still carried the sting of betrayal, not because she missed Louis, but because of how deeply he had wounded her. One rainy afternoon, Mama Nyasha entered her office holding a simple envelope. "This came for you," she said softly. Naima took it, her hands freezing when she saw the handwriting. It was too familiar. Louise. For a long moment, she didn't open it. She just stared, her heart heavy with a mixture of curiosity, pain, disgust, and maybe, just maybe, a tiny flicker of something she couldn't aim. When she finally unfolded the letter, her eyes traced the neat, careful words written as if he had practiced them many times before. "Naima," it began, "I don't know if you'll ever read this. I don't even know if I deserve for you to, but I need to say this before I lose my mind. You were never the shame. You were the light. I see that now." Naima blinked back tears, not because his words moved her, but because they came far too late. "I let my pride speak louder than love. I believed lies because it was easier than facing the truth. I failed you as a husband, a man, and a human being. You needed protection, and I gave you pain. You needed a partner, and I became your enemy. I watch you now, standing tall, helping others, while I sit here in a cell, watching the world move on without me. That is my punishment." He went on, recalling the nights he replayed, the moments he hurt her, the night he slapped her, the night he called her a liar, the day she walked away and he did nothing. "I think about it every night. You were my light, and I turned it off." At the end, he wrote, "I don't expect forgiveness. I just needed you to know. I finally see." Naima folded the letter gently and placed it in a drawer. She said nothing. No tears fell. She didn't tell anyone what it said, because the truth was, there was nothing left to say. She didn't need his apology. Not now. Not after all the pain, shame, and loneliness he let her drown in. Not after his silence when she screamed for help. His letter was full of regret. But her silence was louder. She never replied. Because sometimes the strongest thing a woman can do is walk away and never look back. Naima had already stepped into a future with no space for his guilt. She didn't hate him. She wished him no harm. But she no longer carried the weight of his betrayal. She found peace in places he would never see. And that was enough. Years passed, and Naima's name became one children learned in school, and women whispered with hope. Her story spread far beyond the borders of Kigwaza and Kabanda. It touched hearts across the nation, from small villages to the grand palace. In Nara, one bright morning, Naima stood in a golden hall filled with thousands. Cameras flashed, flags waved, women held banners with her name. She had been invited by the Queen of Wara herself, not just for her bravery, but for changing the lives of so many. The Queen, dressed in royal robes with a kind smile, stepped forward and placed a jeweled medal around Naima's neck. For strength, for justice, for being the voice of the voiceless, she declared. The crowd erupted in cheers. Naima took a deep breath and stepped up to the microphone. The same girl who once walked barefoot through the night with tears in her eyes now stood taller than ever. I was once almost owned, she said, her voice steady and clear. But now I own my voice, and I own my destiny. The applause thundered. People wept. Women clapped with pride. And in that moment, Naima knew she was no longer just a survivor. She was a symbol, a leader, a queen without a crown who built her kingdom not with power, but with truth, courage, and an unbreakable spirit. True strength is not about avoiding pain, but rising above it. When you own your story, you inspire others to find their voice and courage. If Naima's journey inspired you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share the power of hope with others.